Awesome. Let's record the computer. Okay, I am currently recording. Please feel free to chat. I will try to come back and check in with you for questions or other such things. Go down. Go down.
Desi has a question on the language I was suggesting.
Hold on, I'm fighting with my computer. Can you see the menu that's up, or just, can you guys see the big menu blocking the middle of my screen? Andrea, Jean? No? Okay, sweet. I can see a big menu blocking the middle of my screen, so I thought you could, but that's fine. Good, okay. Let's get started on an assessment. We can talk about syllabus toward the end, because it's another, I don't know if Grant wants to, you want to ask him if he's gonna join, or just tell him we're starting. Okay. So for us, I just wanted to welcome you to the assessment meeting. This is sort of our meeting. We're gonna start out with a review of our current assessments and the processes for them. I've attached a couple of documents. You guys have, did you get hand out? For you guys to reference. And one of the first documents is the Humanities Assessment Plan. And it just kind of tells you what we've been doing as far as assessments are concerned, and what our plan is for the future. I've made some edits to it since the last time. The goal was 70% mastery of an assessment. They have moved that needle up to 80% of students with 80% mastery. So I've updated sort of our data to reflect that. Again, this has got the copy of our current survey, and this, I don't think that the questions have been updated in here. They might have been. I'll have to check when I updated it. So, and then the mapping and the rubric. We have made a few changes to the rubric, but they haven't been updated yet. So this is the old rubric. This will be updated before February 15th, which is my due date to have things back into them. Wanted to share something. Come here. Thank you to Sarah for helping start this document. We worked on it together, but as a lion's share of some of her comments. It is sort of an update on assessment, a revisiting of what the PRH, the whole Philosophy, Religion, and Humanities Discipline Committee talked about the other day. And sort of a refresher on why we do assessment, what assessment is for, and what we gain from that. So please take some time, read through this document. We do assessments, number one, because we are required by both SACS and the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board and the department. We'll get to that. It's like, it starts at a higher level. It starts as, you know, state mandated regulation of assessment and proof that we are doing our jobs. But it also is good for our students. The data that we gather, and you guys will see some of that a little later, the data that we gather is something that we can use to help serve our students better, to help plan our courses better, to help plan our course schedules better, and to make curriculum choices and textbook adjustments. So this data tells us a little bit about how we're doing, but really how our students are doing. Again, data is sort of the key to helping us advocate for policy changes and resources. There are a lot of things that don't fit our model, and we have to prove that those things are not working for us, and data is how we prove that. Again, we need you. Last semester, we did receive an excellent for compliance for administering and reporting our assessments. That means as a department, what we did have, I did a good job of zhuzhing up and making it look like we were doing a good job. If you look at the numbers to how many humanities students that we have enrolled compared to how much data that I am submitting, it is less than 50% for the fall of 2018. We're either not administering the assessments or we are not reporting the assessments. If you are, great, thank you. And I believe I have a thank you in here. Sarah has a thank you in here for you. If you're not, we need your data. We need your information. We need you to participate in this so we can all benefit from it. Again, my students aren't motivated. They don't take assessment seriously. This isn't what I teach. You can mutter all of those things, but at the end of the day, it starts with the state telling us that we have to do assessment. SACS requires us to do a content survey because we are a survey course. And the Texas Coordinating Board, Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board requires us to test general education competencies. So the state tells us that we have to. Our department also tells us that we have to. And coming to the end of this, you'll see how it's going to start counting on our evaluations if we're not doing it.
Can you explain a little bit why the accreditation matters?
Yes. So I think everybody, and this would be new to Andrea, we went through an accreditation nightmare a few years ago where we weren't running things properly, and SACS dropped the hammer on us, and a lot of people lost their jobs, a lot of people gained jobs because they changed the teaching credentials, but they also made us accountable for what we were teaching. And so that is the survey courses. That's one of the reasons we're required to do a content survey, is to make sure that we are teaching what the state of Texas thinks we should be teaching, and that we are testing to prove that we are doing that. To stay accredited, SACS has to prove that we have done that, and we have to prove that as a department. So, you have anything to add?
One of the nice things about doing this is decide what's on the content survey,
Yes.
as opposed to it being mandated by other people. So we welcome, you know that it's a lot of departments that we're doing it.
I'm gonna put you guys in. I don't think they can see us. So I think we have to be.
Yeah, the camera's
Hi. You know, if there's questions that you think just really are not things that you cover in the classroom, or if there's wording suggestions, you know, feel free to give us that feedback. We're constantly adjusting this process. But, you know, for the most part, the thing we need the most is just compliance. We just need the data so that we can report it and continue to get excellent on our reviews. Also, one of the things that's interesting is that we'd really love to be able to compare like the early college high school classes to the traditional classes. We were able to do that, I think, for 1301,
Yes.
but not for 1302. So it would be really nice to know how students are faring in both of those, particularly if we want to advocate for certain kind of policy changes in early college high school, which I know a lot of us feel very passionately about right now.
So we're going to discuss that when we look at our results.
Being able to have those numbers saying, hey, look, it looks like these students are not terribly prepared for class. You know, what are some ways that we can support them before they get in there or whatnot, compared to traditional students, which we don't have that data. So yeah.
So anyway, we'll revisit that.
Can you all hear Carrie from here?
Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not quiet. So again, there's some strategies like the voting time in class, assigning that they are factored into your average. I made them just, they don't have to look at this. I made them just a few points. I made it 50 points out of 100 for the end of the year, just as a carrot. Like if they didn't do well, you know, it wasn't going to hurt their grade. It wasn't going to drop them a letter grade. But it did, again, and I had almost 100% compliance. So,
I made mine final exam part 1 and 2.
yeah.
And I had I
thing.
walked them to the lab, and I had 100% compliance. So I only it was only worth 5 points of their total grade. So it's not like a 30% like some people have for their final exams. But a lot of them before that were just saying, I don't know how to answer this question, and just especially the younger students. But when it was an exam, all of a sudden they did know how to answer the question. So that might be a strategy. It's not, obviously not required. Some people suggest just doing a completion grade, like, you know, pass fail basically.
I suggest not doing that. Erin did that for her first, and we had difficulty recovering her data.
So don't do that.
I mean, by all means, score it. You can choose to not show the students that score, and you can choose to not add it into the grading module, but definitely don't make it complete or incomplete because it will mess up the scores.
So maybe just 100 or 0 for scoring, if you want to do it that way. Or 10 points.
10 points. It could be, you can make it worth whatever you want. It scores out of 100. So
Does it?
both of them do. Oh, the essay scores out of 10.
For the rubric.
The essay scores out of 10. The content survey scores out of 100.
Okay.
So, again, just like reporting grades, certifying classes, discipline assessment is a requirement of our job, and it will be on our faculty evaluations as part of our PHP, our highest priority to hire process. So I don't want anyone to miss that boat because they just didn't do or comply with assessment. And that includes entering the data in a timely manner. So
there's 2 phases, right?
Yeah.
There's the administration of the actual assessment, and then there's the taking whatever data that you've acquired and just hopping into the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And if you at any point are like, where's the spreadsheet? Because I have 1,000 emails, just send us an email, we'll send it to you.
Absolutely. Or go back to the agenda from 1/17/19 anyone here. It's later at a later date, and you will see it that way. So just a quick review. I'm going to the agenda. This is just a link. This isn't a document. This is just a link to the general education assessments. It kind of talks about what the assessment schedule is, what we're assessing when, and how we're assessing. Right now, we are looking at communication. That's what we're testing for right now. So this is just sort of ACC-wide, how this breaks down. We're looking at develop, interpret, express ideas and information through written, oral, visual communication that is adapted to purpose, structure, audience, and medium. We do that through the essay prompt. This is just a refresher of the ACC resources in case you're wondering why we do this, and a little bit more information. Again, these are the things that are on our master syllabi. So looking at the data that we collected for fall of 2018, this of course is the tracking sheet, and because this is complicated to look at and scroll through and read, if you guys click on it, I have created a overview survey. So I can actually share this on this screen. Hang on. Has anyone asked a question that I missed? Andrea, Jean?
I think you could look in the,
No, that's okay. We're gonna use Collaborate next time. It's gonna be awesome.
we just need to figure out how to upload the video afterwards.
Oh, okay. So this is a snapshot of our, and so I don't even know if Sarah's seen this yet because I just did this earlier. Remember I told you I was taking a break? That doesn't happen.
I saw you not taking a break.
I know, you saw me not taking a break. That's fine. An assessment snapshot, again, ACC is having us have an 80% goal, 80% of students with 80% mastery. Of the data that I collected, and this is my summary of the data that I collected, our 1301 content survey, we have 65% mastery. On the content survey, that's 80% or above. On 1302, there's 38% mastery, which is interesting when you think about their essay scores. That's all we'll get to that. Giving you something to look forward to. 1301, 41% mastery, and 1302 essay prompts, 86% mastery. It's a very interesting set of numbers, and it has a very interesting story to tell. I have begun to tell that story in my summary, and this is something that I have to submit to our DAC computer system by February 15th. That's why I've been working on it. We not only have to come up with a plan and administer a plan, we have to respond to that plan. We have to look at the data. We have to tell them what trends we see and what we're going to do about any of those trends if they are negative. So as you can see here, I have broken it down for traditional lecture, for distance learning, for our Great Questions course, which is a new section that we're measuring in there, and our early college high school, which I have broken down by campus because it's more interesting that way, because those are not the same students. And so, again, there are marked difference in the pre-score tests for traditional DIL, GQS, and early college high school students. Our DIL and Great Question students have higher scores in the pre-test than our early college high school population. They're older students. They've had more life experience. They are either better at taking tests or have a little bit more life knowledge. There's probably a lot of reasons for that. Traditionally and historically, our early college high school students have had poorer scores on the pre-course assessment. That's just out of the gate. However, the post-point gains made by early college high school students are far higher than our traditional populations, which means that having to go to class every single day, never having the amount of absences that our traditional students have, being forced to keep up with the work, is working for them. We are, or their system or their liaison is pushing them to where they are reaching at least the 70% mark by post-course assessment. That's good news. Not for our 80% goal, but you can't take a 14-year-old and expect him to do the same as a 19-year-old. It's just not going to happen.
We're seeing like 30 to 40% increases. I mean, that's really remarkable.
Yes. So my note here is that that they are working to catch up. They are, their environment is allowing them to, I feel, finish better than we thought that they were finishing. It makes me feel better about our early college, high school things. We are having to work harder to get them there, and I know we all share that feeling. But at least that part of it is indicated that it is working. Our Great Questions population does not have the same curriculum or the textbook of either the traditional or the early college, high school populations, but they are several points higher than the traditional population. They started further behind and ended up ahead on a content survey. Again, their scores are not as high as the traditional students, but the gains from pre to post assessment are good, which means that regardless of the fact that they are not using the Fiero text, that they are not, does she have a question? Question? No?
No.
All right. They are having the same experience as in our other 1301 classes. That was a big question that we had going into this, is are they going to have the same experience? The data is showing that they are catching up, that they do know and are familiar, have had exposure to those topics by the end of the semester.
Or at least can, use process of elimination enough to know, they have enough context to be able to take the test.
Again, this was 100% voluntary, this survey. This was not any points toward our Great Questions curriculum, because that one's pretty structured point-wise. So I had pretty good compliance from my students on this, because they were interested in seeing what we could know and what we don't know by the end of the semester.
Did they take it at home or in your class?
My students took it at home. So it was, we are going to continue to deliver this through Blackboard. If you have a chance to get them down to the lab to take it in class time, or you happen to be like Carrie has a computer classroom lab, right. If you can get one of those, then yay, that'll work for it. But we should be able to gain access to a lab to do those things with our students if we need to.
And just a note on that, I had a almost comically hellish experience at Northridge last semester trying to bring my students into a computer lab on the first day of class. Like, I was literally held up at the door for like 30 minutes and like the person was in a panic saying, you can't bring your students in here. So one thing to think about is asking the campus manager where you can reserve a lab if you know you want to do an assessment on a particular day, and actually making sure that's on the books so that you don't have frightened administrators jumping down your throat. There are some labs that are supposed to be off limits for classes. And that was the idea. It's like, well, what if our students need to come in and do homework? I'm like, it's the first day of class. But there are also, though, I was able, in the portables, this is probably, I shouldn't say this, never mind.
Never mind. So Sarah's going to have something that she'll share with us later.
Not on camera.
All right. So if you look at our, you write that, you fixed that and I fixed it and then I changed that. All right. This is the 1302 content survey results. Again, all I have is early college, high school data. I don't have any other data, so I can't make much of a comparison, I can tell you that they didn't do very well based on an 80% goal, but they killed a 70% goal, which used to be our goal. So
is your 80% your
80%.
exemplary?
What you told us yesterday, we have to start.
Well, we have a 70% goal for achieved and an 80% goal for exemplary.
So
we only need to hit 70.
So we only had one goal earlier, and it was 70% mastery. So I had just shifted that to 80% mastery. It doesn't really matter. So can I?
I mean, no, setting it matters to them.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't matter
Right.
what you achieve.
It doesn't.
Like,
Okay.
So the thing to keep in mind is the college, when they're evaluating our assessment process.
Don't forget that.
Yeah, I'm walking over here. The college, when they evaluate our assessment process and decide whether we're doing a good job, actually doesn't care that much about how many of our students hit our target. They care more about what we set as the target. We're not evaluated on how much our students hit the target. We're evaluated based on whether we set 80% or 7% as a target for some arbitrary reason, and whether we, do anything meaningful with what we learn about their relationship to that target. So, yeah, I wouldn't worry about.
No.
70%.
Is there an action plan in
Yeah,
place?
just sort of like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just sort of like we see our students are not hitting our target, but we do that anyway. Even if they were hitting 92%, we'd still be like, how can we help them do better?
So the mathematics on this is that a majority of our enrollment, at least for that I have assessment data for, is early college, high school, and they traditionally, historically score lower than our traditional students. So of course their content grades and their essay grades are going to be at that level. They are scoring at an average of 70, which on the content survey, post-course content survey, that is about what their grades are. That is about the level that they are working. So that is net matching. That to me tells me that the content survey is accurate to their ability.
I would like to note that's what their grades were after intervention.
No, that's a different meeting, Sarah. That's
to
a
be
different
clear.
meeting, but we need the data to get to the interventions.
But we don't want people to think, we don't want to give the impression that there wasn't a lot of work to get to that 70.
That's a discussion that we have to have. It's like they are catching up, they are reaching that 70%, they are increasing their scores from pre to post. They're making huge gains, even bigger than our traditional students. But this is where they are, and that's where I think they're going to stay. So I don't see this. This data has been accurate the last 2 semesters. And it's actually scored about 70%.
I mean, it's aligning with the
Yeah.
grade difference.
Yeah,
You get to actually do a statistical.
Yeah, this is very, very high level, very not digging into the numbers at
You know
all.
how to pull the grade data tips, right?
I do not. I have requested access to tips again. Mine lapsed. I tried to log in and it said my login wasn't approved. So, yeah, I can go in and make a real comparison. Like I said, this is very high level just on what we have. If we go look at our general education competency assessment, which is our essay prompt, this is the information that I copied from the DAC system in which I enter this data. Again, mastery, exemplary was 10 points, mastery was 8 points, proficiency was 7 points, and emerging skills was anything below 7. And we have 80% at mastery, because me and Sarah talked about that there was this level of people that were above this and then some that didn't meet that, and we all ended up, I think it skewed our grading because we were on a 3-point system and not a 4-point system. So we are working on adjusting the rubric, our rubric that we use for the essay.
Which essay?
This is the essay prompt I'm talking about.
Oh, from the online.
Yeah, this is the essay prompt I'm talking about. That's our general education competency assessment, not the content survey.
Yeah.
It's the essay that's measuring communication. The content survey is just measuring everything else. Again, 1301, there were more data that was submitted. Again, average scores. The early college high school scores are lower, but we don't know enough about this. We don't have enough data. We don't have enough people submitting it to tell whether or not that they are scoring lower, if we are grading them harder, if we haven't calibrated this rubric. this is really the first time we've used it and graded it and looked at its by itself. This is the first semester. So I don't really want to say anything about this until we, sorry, I am, it's not going down. Sorry, I'm here. And again, I'm just saying that I can't make any real see any trends or make any comments on this until we approve compliance. So this, which is an extremely skewed data set, is the essay prompt for the 1302 classes. It says 1301.
No, this, you have to scroll down.
All right. Because it's only ECHS and it's only like 3 teachers.
Yeah.
Okay,
Like
so
it
it's
is
a very
not,
limited
it doesn't
population.
include DIL, it doesn't include lecture. It is not a full sample set. So the scores are very high, especially for Sarah. Congratulations.
I also adjusted my grades up a lot. So
But it's, like I said, it's like I said, we
rubric
have
wasn't
not
working for me.
calibrated this assessment. And so the East Side students also did very well. My students not as well, but you know, that was, again, this is only of the students that actually did the essay prompt. So the students that felt confident enough to do the essay prompt gave good answers. And I think that's where we need to talk about our students' reluctance to do this prompt, how we can, you know, motivate them to do this prompt, making it like 10 points extra credit or working it into as your final exam. To get students to do this. Again, my sample size was very small. I have numbers of how many students that we actually had. This had like maybe 98 total submissions out of like 5 classes. So it was not a full force of students. So,
but what it does tell us is in the sample group, the early college high school students are able to write.
yes.
Which is nice to know because, you know, we might be a little more gentle than them with them because we know, like, for example, that they don't know how to capitalize sentences. You know, we could be a little harder probably.
And if you look at 1301 and she's not here, I think Desi was harder at Maynard.
Yeah.
I think with her English background that she was grading them harder, and also historically the Maynard students are less prepared English-wise. They do not have English, an upper level English writing class before they take humanities.
Is there a way that, so you're doing a rubric with 1 ranking?
We're adding, we had 3, we're adding a 4th.
Yeah, because I wonder.
The rubric right now looks like this, and we are adding a 4th. Like I added mastery, proficiency, competency, emerging skill. Like they did it, they sort of did it, they didn't do it.
Okay. But,
there's one section on conventions and grammar. Is that what you're?
that's what I'm saying. How much of it is linguistic proficiency and how much of it is?
Right now they're evenly weighted, and they don't have to be. Right now it's the questions 1 through 4 are evenly weighted. But we're measuring question 4 for the general ed competency.
Linguistic proficiency.
Yes.
The others are more communication.
Yes.
And content.
Content. The
Yeah.
other 2 are content and critical thinking.
Yeah.
So there's 3 questions total. Actually, this is old. There's only 3 questions now. We got rid of global citizen. So
yeah.
So there's 3 questions. There's identify to society and give an accurate description.
Well,
of
that's not the right description, but
yeah, I know.
yeah.
This is old. But and then compare them and think about their contributions and their modern world and then communicate. So actually, I can pull it up. We'll talk about it.
Well,
We're working on the rubric.
I guess like, and this is something Shantae talked about, she's done a lot on, her background's English.
Yeah.
Just like separating off English communication skills, like have you gotten your idea across it from linguistic proficiency? Did you capitalize? Did you use proper grammar, et cetera?
No, that is like if you look.
I just,
Let me pull up
my
the
assumption
actual
is that with high
This
school
is the
students,
actual
we may
rubric.
see good communication and just
No.
less linguistic proficiency. Partly it's because they've had less years to develop.
Yeah. Here it is. This is the one I've been making the edits in.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the one I've been making the edits in. So, so mastery, proficiency, competency, emergence.
Go ahead and read the mastery just so we can see if we're addressing grants.
Okay, so student provided a detailed description of 2 significant works of art and contextualized them expertly within their culture, demonstrating a comprehensive understanding of the course material. That's content. Student expertly analyzed how these works of art have influenced or are relevant to modern culture, demonstrating insightful and high-level critical thinking about their relative contributions. That's our critical thinking module. This is our communication module. The student expertly communicated an academic voice on a college level in the terms of structure, mechanics, word choice, and organization. Are you thinking that should be 2 things?
Yeah, all right. So part of what she was talking about is partly also how this ends up coding around race and class lines.
Okay.
That we often project the linguistic proficiency as very geared towards a certain group of people.
Yeah.
And then there's the ability to just communicate despite that. So just wondering if you said, did you get your idea across? Do I, when I read it, do I know what you're saying? As opposed to using an academic voice, mechanics, word choice, like if you took those 2 out so you could look at one and the other. Because you might find that you find a number of students in a certain population of students somewhere or just overall here can communicate well, they just don't know the conventions
to do it in. We knew what they were saying. I had that, I experienced that a lot with my English as a second language learner.
Right.
So are we talking about clarity then?
That they are, did you,
Ability
there's
to
a,
express.
Yeah, ability to
I was
express
just saying.
Yeah, clarity.
Jean, did you hear what Grant was saying?
A little bit.
Okay, so do you remember that part on one of your rubrics that said that, hey, I understood what you were saying, there were some mistakes, but it did not interfere with the clarity and communication of your message? That was in our rubric at one time, and it went away because some of this is adopted from the value rubric.
Right.
Do you need some of that language again?
Yes, that's what Grant is talking about is
Yeah, I caught most of it, but didn't know what you might need.
yeah. Huh?
I caught most of it, but didn't know what you might need.
We have a rubric somewhere we used for something that said, and I've used it from you. It's
Yeah, I have it. I use it for the time capsules and other things.
Can you post that language in the assessment folder for us to look over?
Or just an email.
Yeah, or email or assessment folder for everyone to see, because that is sort of the direction. Like I said, I was looking at the value rubric, and some of this is from the value rubric, but from that, moving forward, I think maybe Grant's right, and that might change.
Because somebody could have a ton to say and really beautifully express themselves,
But not capitalize their I.
Conventions and structure.
Yeah, and I think that, like you say, with the younger students and with the English as a second language students, which both of those populations are heavily represented in our demographics for especially our courses, that might be helpful. So thank you, Jean.
It also might feel good for them to see, I really enjoyed and was able to receive what you were saying. However, you might want to look at some of these other aspects of writing that could use improvement.
okay. So those were overall our results. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our plan. We are going to need to create, and this really affects me and Sarah and Lyman and Desi who are currently teaching them, but also impacts anyone who wants to start teaching Humanities 1315. We will need to start to create an assessment that can speak to that course load in a generic way. So we can apply it to all of those courses. I included a link to the AACU value rubrics. It's just this continuing conversation about rubrics and about working on our language and about making it something that is fair and not biased, as I assume, I guess so is. That we are doing a good job at looking at our rubrics, how we use our rubrics, and that our rubrics are working for not just us, but for our populations. As a note, one of our goals for spring of 2019 is to improve overall completion of the assessments, to improve compliance both on students and in faculty, and reporting.
Again, I have a February 15th due date for this information that I've put together here, and then there's a June 7th for the spring semester. One thing I did want to note to both the people that are sitting here and to that is that I did update some assessment files. The only thing that's updated on the pre-course and post-course assessment for you guys that you're seeing, and I'll pull it up in a second, is I updated the general ed competencies because they were old. And that folder is right here for you to import. These are the brand new ones. The essay prompt is we're still working on that rubric. Just for all of you to know, you can upload it now if you want, but that is probably going to change.
The rubric,
The
not
rubric. This is the updated gen eds on also the essay prompt. So those files are located here, and then I have a video, of course, on how to do that, but I saw Grant the other day had an actual worksheet on how to do it, and I'm going to steal his. So I have a video on how to upload it, but you have a worksheet. Bang. So that is assessment. That is what we have. We know what we have to do. We know what's ahead of us. Are there any questions or comments from the people on the computer?
I shot an email over because my Zoom was being glitchy.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if it was for everyone, but I haven't gotten you my essay grades from the fall. If those are still helpful, I can still get them to you. It's been on the, I'm sorry, it's been on the bottom of my to-do list.
February 15th. I can add your data. I can recrunch the numbers super easy.
All right, I will get it to you. Thank you.
Just send me an email when you add it because I'm not going to be checking it.
Will do.
All right, thank you. That's open to everybody, whoever's sitting here or not, anyone, people who haven't out there in the world, if someone actually views this who's not in the room.
And just a note on that, I find it easiest just to do it when I'm grading.
Yeah.
Just to like open up the browser real quickly after I've gotten those
Yeah.
grades, just put it in there because otherwise I'll forget.
Yeah.
Especially after the end of the
Again,
semester.
I am in charge of that spreadsheet and I wasn't the first one to post my data. That's all I'm saying. It wasn't me, it was Sarah. So, and it was Desi. So I was like third, but it is not a competition. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns regarding data? Regarding assessment, regarding your role in it, why we do it, how you can improve how you do it, anything like that? From the people on the computer.
I mean, I think that overall the essays were pretty decent, and I think that for the most part that's because, unbeknownst to me, my final project was kind of similar to their essay. So they were
Competition is always good, Andrew.
they were able to use what they were already working on with that, so that was good. With some tweaks here and there, if they actually paid attention to the differences between the two prompts, they did pretty well. But I had, I think, a kind of global problem with really grappling with how these pieces contribute to modern society beyond just vague statements like, oh, and they help us understand the Egyptians or something like that. I don't know how specific we're looking for there, if you really want them to get into it in that time period that they have.
Are you talking like in 1301, like how would the Egyptian pyramids be something that impacted modern day?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So I was going to say, we still go to Egypt. We still pour the building materials in the way they built the pyramids. That's informed how the Greeks build their stuff, which informed how the Romans built their stuff, which informed how we still do it today. So there are several threads. There's several threads that they could make. I mean, even just things that look similar to that. I gave points for someone that listed the Luxor in Vegas.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So I'm looking for someone it's the process of thinking about it and thinking about it correctly, and not so much that deep down, like critical, like what was the impact? Like I don't want them to write a dissertation on it. I want them to be able to make that connection.
Okay. On that note, I think it's great, Andrea, that your assignment already sort of was prompting them.
Yeah.
And I do this in class all the time. So I kind of built the essay questions based on the questions I usually ask them in class anyway. So I usually ask, every other assignment or so, I say, what did this make you think of in terms of modern society? Or which idea from this time period do you think was most important to modern life or whatnot? So they're already kind of making those connections, hopefully, and giving them a little bit of practice throughout the semester so that it doesn't just totally take them off guard. It's also one of the goals of our class.
Yeah. So as I was saying, yeah, these questions were these questions were born of a group collaboration. A lot of it came from stuff Sarah's already been doing. Some of it was informed by the Making Connections assignment that Jean has. And I was saying my Great Question students who do Making Connections assignments spoke to this much better than the standard students. So like you said, you're already doing sort of a Making Connections final project. Like from what you've described, it seems like we're all kind of on the same page on that. And when we get together, not that we have the time all the time to discuss curriculum and share curriculum, I think you'll see that a lot of us are doing very similar things to what you're doing, because that's the best way to get it across, to make them go research things and then make the connections themselves.
Cool. I guess for me, the primary goal here is to have them make some sort of like emotional or intellectual like connection to the material that's not just like, oh, this is a thing that happened thousands of years ago, why should I care about it? But oh no, I know someone who's Muslim, you know, like whatever it is that they can glom onto will hopefully make the material stick a little better and help them realize that, you know, all of this stuff is on a continuum and informs our daily life today.
Yeah. Bye. Grant is bye, Grant. Okay, so that is all I had on assessment. Again, I wanted to talk about our process, why we do our process, so you kind of some information on what we have done. Again, all located in this assessments folder in our team folder. Again, our plan is there. I didn't really get to talk a lot about the value rubric, but I think if you look at that, there's a link to the AACU value rubric for written communication. That is one of the rubrics that ACC and our, and it sort of uses language that sometimes impedes meaning because of usage and error. This is sort of what Grant was talking about. And I think if we take Jean's language and look at this value rubric, that there is sort of a difference in how we measure that. So this is just one of those things I wanted us to look at. It's something that is on the ACC website under assessment. It's something that is designed with the with assessment in mind. So
since we have a little bit of time, unless people have other questions, could we talk about the syllabus language?
Okay. I haven't looked at it entirely, but
I can read it out
we
loud.
gotta.
Yeah.
So Sarah wanted to talk, if you guys have the time, a little bit about the syllabus language. She'd sent an email out about a course policies.
So we had a very long discussion that some of you may or may not have read over email about whether or not to drop students and under what circumstances we can drop students. And Grant was saying that we need to have very specific language. If we do decide to take that action, we have to have very specific language in our syllabus to be able to do it. So I was just working on my syllabus today, and I wrote this out. Desi's already made some suggestions, but so if the instructor believes that a student's academic performance, attendance, or behavior warrants removal from the class, the instructor has the right to do so at any time. The instructor will make efforts to communicate with the student before withdrawing them and explain the rationale behind the decision or offer alternatives on a case-by-case basis. The instructor may require that the student meet with an academic coach, tutor, or college liaison in order for the student to remain in the class. And that's the part Desi wasn't sure about. I wish Grant hadn't just left because he would know better than, I think any of us. Okay, so hopefully he can respond to that. I think that, anyway, I don't know if we can require that or not. If a student is struggling academically or personally, the department recommends contacting the instructor early via email rather than waiting until late in the semester. The instructor prefers to collaborate early and often on solutions for success in the classroom rather than resort to a withdrawal. So even though this language says we can do it, we're saying this is like a last resort, and we'd like to do these other interventions if possible instead. This gives us flexibility for early college, high school to work with the liaisons, so that's one of the reasons I put that little statement in there. because they're the ones that should be having those discussions, really. I mean, we can talk to our students, but they also are the ones that pull them into, or maybe have them talk to coaches. It's harder for the early college high school students, though, because they're on such a limited schedule. Great Questions, on the other hand, already has that built in where they're supposed to meet with a coach, and they have like student success initiatives built in. So they may even already have a relationship with somebody by that point. So
I have a relationship with the head of academic coaching.
but I mean the students.
Oh, yeah.
Because they've had to already meet with a coach as one of their assignments. So I was just wondering what people thought about this language. Does it seem overly harsh? Would they want to adopt it? Is it something we want to put in the general syllabus or leave up to instructors?
I think we should put it in the general syllabus.
Do either of you have an idea or thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds, because it, as you said, it leaves everything quite open, to, even if it's part of the general syllabus, it still leaves the instructor some pretty significant leeway to implement it, to, take various, I'm getting some feedback. Is that happening for you guys too?
No, I can hear you.
So yeah, I think that sounds fair. And I mean, as long as, just as far as logistics goes, do we need, for the early college high school students, do we need to notify their advisors before we take this kind of action, or is that?
Yeah, we should. We really should, if we have a good relationship with them. I mean, technically we don't have to, but Grant really strongly recommends that we do.
Okay. Yeah, I think that sounds fair.
And Patty.
Yeah, I think they'll appreciate it, because I do know that the Travis students were, at least in the fall, they were required to meet with the liaison 2 or 3 times a semester, like in midterm grades, and so they see them at least 2 to 3 times. So I don't think we have to worry about the compliance part of it. But yeah, I think we should just say, in an effort to help with the situations we had this past fall, here's some language that we're adding to our master syllabus. And I think they'll actually appreciate that.
I actually don't want it required. I really like it, and I think it can be recommended, but I personally don't want it required. Like, as a part of, like, the master syllabus can have recommended language and required language. My personal feeling is that this should be recommended, or but not required. I have something similar that I use, but I actually prefer to say that it's on the students to withdraw themselves if they're not doing well. So I prefer to have this recommended as opposed to required.
Sure. And I mean, of course, any instructor doesn't have to take any action according to any of this. It just, what it does is, if there's a grade dispute with Grant or some sort of problem that gets escalated, he has more to work with if there's something in our syllabus.
I have something, I just don't want this.
Okay.
See what so that's, I'm totally happy to have y'all adopt it as recommended language. I just prefer to use what the school requires plus my addendum than this.
Do you want to share your addendum in that thread?
My addendum is basically like, I don't withdraw students for any reason, so you guys aren't going to want to adopt it.
I just think it's a good conversation to have.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think your language is great if this is the policy that you guys want to implement for yourselves.
So in terms of logistics, if we were to put it into the syllabus as recommended, would we just put it, like, maybe highlight it or something and say recommended, but not required? Just so it's,
because there's other sections that are recommended and not required as well.
Okay.
Like, for example, the food pantry one is recommended as opposed to required, and there's a number that are. And so my vote is that this just be one of the recommended.
Cool.
Or, ideas, proposals.
I was thinking in terms of the wording, we could say the instructor may request.
To clarify what Jean is saying, and to speak what
I might be able to read that.
I am on the college policies, and the language is, it is the responsibility of the student to ensure that his name is removed from the roll should they decide to withdraw. The instructor reserves the right to drop a student should he or she feel it is necessary. If a student decides to withdraw, she can verify, blah, 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 blah. Strongly encourage or obtain a copy of their withdrawal, blah, 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 blah. The reason that Grant discourages withdrawing students from your course is because that impacts their entire collegiate career. They're only allowed 6 through their undergraduate career. And for early college high school students, that starts for them now. That starts for them at the age of 15.
But so does an F. So it's kind
No,
of
no, no.
like,
An F they can take over.
right.
A withdrawal they can't recover. A withdrawal can hurt them when they are 21 and are trying to take organic chem and it's just not working for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're more concerned about their GPA for a scholarship than they are here. They are not working on a scholarship. If they don't score more than a C, they will be dropped from their program by their program. If we remove them for, you know, reasons that could be remedied, and again, I don't know what extreme situations you may or may not have had in your classrooms, then we are giving them something that can't be undone. That is 6 for their entire career. It has to be super egregious for it to be that. So that's why we put the language in of, I won't drop you for whatever reason. I don't ever want to be blamed for something 6 years from now. If that teacher hadn't withdrew me, I could have passed. I don't know what her problem was. Like, I don't ever, that's why I do it, because that's why I don't sleep at night, because I think about whose lives I've ruined. But I think that's where Jean gets that language, is just you can only get in trouble by withdrawing. But I like your languages, and let's have this, if you are having difficulties, that's like, your language should more be under tutoring instead of withdrawals. So it should be where we had added language on tutoring last semester on, hey, these are your resources. Please take care of resources before rather than later. So it's, again, Grant's on this thread. So
and you can reserve the right to withdraw your students. Plenty of teachers do. So I don't want to take that away from you. I just want this to not have to be like all humanities teachers have to have this in the syllabus. That's all I'm asking.
Totally on board for that. I just think that we should be part of it. Okay, so we should be clear about what language you're using, regardless of what our policy is.
Yeah.
Because right now it's a little bit too vague. Grant wasn't comfortable with what the default syllabus says in terms of like if we were to withdraw someone.
You mean this language?
This one.
Yeah,
yes.
it's not really
ACC's never got good language. They're always hedging their bets.
Yeah. The second thing about that I was trying to kind of put in there is sort of setting the tone in terms of like, hey, please contact me over email. Hey, there's a bunch of other things that can happen other than failing. You know, keep in mind that there is a possibility that something bad might happen, or you might get withdrawn for this class, which might mean that you're withdrawn from this program. You know, there is a negative consequence, but there's lots of other alternatives. So kind of just setting the tone of you know, because there's a lot of students that are just terrified to even talk to you until like the last day of class. And then they're like crying and you know, you're like, oh, if you would have talked to me literally like a week ago, we probably could have resolved this, but this is like my drop deadline.
One thing I'm doing is adding an expectations thing in my syllabus for PCS students.
Yeah.
So that they know, like, if they're struggling or if there's a problem, this is what you can do. Because I think, like, in my situation, I had cerebral problems in my class with people cheating on tests and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm adding an expectations paragraph that has some of the same kind of language. These are the things you can do if the situation arises.
Can you send that? Put
Yeah,
that in the thread?
and I even have a chart. It's college students versus high school students, what the expectations are. So that they can see, okay, in colleges, we've got to do this. And I've used that before when I taught in Dallas, and it works really well because they tend to, talk to me more because they know what the expectations are, and there's no gray area. They know that this is what you've got to do well in this class. And it kind of covers, I guess, part of what Jean is saying and what you're saying. You know, but it's just under like course expectations so that they know it's not like a withdrawal situation, but you are expected to do A, B, C, and D.
And if you're not doing well in this class, it's probably because you're not doing those things.
Yeah. So I'll send that to everybody.
Yeah, you just put that in the thread.
Jean's syllabus is covered in language that says, please call me at any time, ever. They have her personal phone number.
Yeah, my students don't.
Okay, it is 3:33. Although I did book this until 4,
I will bid you adieu again. I am watching the course calendar for the classes that are on the chopping block. They are having that meeting right now. Andrea, one of your courses is on there, your HLC morning class.
Okay.
I'll know by 6. Grant may call everybody personally. Sometimes he lets me know ahead of time, and if it does, I'll know because one of my classes is on the chopping block too.
Okay.
So I will let you all know when I know if you haven't known otherwise. So I am planning a social event for the entire PRH, probably March 8th. My second in command, Don Becker, has previous arrangements on March 1st.
Could we
So-
do it like mid-afternoon instead of like late evening?
I never do them late evening. I always do them at happy hour.
Well, happy hour is 5.
No, how 3?
3.
Yes. Early happy
I
hour.
think I have a thing that night.
You have a thing. I am, again, I'm looking for new venues. We may return to the Brutorium, but there's a whole lot of new places. Holy Roller is pretty cool. Contigo. There's a lot of places with options other than the Brutorium. So I am looking for social event options. So look out for that email coming.
Carrie?
Yeah.
2 things.
Yes.
This isn't why I'm chiming in. I am going to be out of town that day.
Of course you are.
Surprise. But it's also the first day of South by Southwest.
Oh, because they
Trying
didn't
for
get
events.
back.
I want to go somewhere
We made
related
it back to Brutorium.
South by.
Yeah.
What about doing it a week before?
So just if you do it that day, keep that in mind.
I can't do it on March 1st because John Becker's out of town and he has to do it. Don't ask me why. That's just the way it has to be. If any of you have come to my social events, I do not hold social events because I love to see all of you, although I do. I hold social events because Don Becker makes me. That's the way it goes. That's the relationship. So I will find something that I forgot South by Southwest got moved back. Again, I was aiming for March 1st, but that wasn't a problem. So we may be looking at April 5th. So where that is, oh, we're going to be out of town. No, we're out of town April 11th. Yes, right? Jean? April 11th?
For the conference.
She froze. Yeah, she completely froze.
She's nodding.
She's nodding though. All right, so have a good day. I will send the recording of this plus any updated notes for everyone that could not make it. Thank you and have a good day.
So we can access the pre and post sets electronically, right, in the drive?
They are downloaded. Let me end that meeting.